Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 114 of the Gen Z podcast. I've been anticipating having this guest on. She's been a huge resource and help for me as stepping into my role as being a stepmom. And she was a huge inspiration actually for a blog piece that I wrote a few months back. But her podcast is the Radical Stepmoms podcast, and her name is Christina. Uh, she provides, and I love this as I was looking at her website and all her content and just the copy that she has for her mission. She provides a safe space to talk about the good, bad, and really ugly moments about raising a child you didn't create. And she's super authentic. I love her Instagram. You guys have to follow her Instagram. It's one of my favorite things, just seeing all of her posts because it's so real and you can really relate. So, Christina, thank you so much for being on my podcast. It's so great to see you and have you on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored to be here. That was a lovely intro. Thank you.
Oh, of course. I mean, you are just awesome. And, I want to hear all about how the podcast started and obviously your personal experience with becoming a stepmom. But you're also a licensed clinical social worker.
Mhm.
And I think it's great that you're able to kind of combine that with your personal experience to be able, to help other stepmoms and basically empower them to create the lives they want and desire and the family space, the blended family, create that love. So I think it's great that you're able to kind of, utilize your passion, your life work, and bring it into stepmotherhood.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been such a fulfilling experience.
Mhm.
Being a social worker and working with people and working on, different goals with people and overcoming things like anxiety and depression, and so much of that shows up in stepmotherhood. And just how to unpack our
100%.
feelings, how to deal with them, how to remain present, how not to take things personally. All of those things that we work on in therapy are things that stepmoms are experiencing and are unique to the stepmom experience. So that's kind of how I saw where my niche was of there's something to this that and stepmoms need that support. Yeah.
When did you realize you wanted to be a social worker?
Oh man. I started thinking about, psychology and that kind of stuff in high school.
Okay.
Then after high school, I was like, yep, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to study psychology. And I ended up doing I majored in psychology and minored in criminal justice. And so
Okay.
yeah. So throughout
That's cool.
those different, I guess, ways of, education, I really found my passion in working within the criminal justice system on an individual level. And so working with people who have mental health issues and who are criminalized for those mental health issues. So then that kind of just pushed me into grad school, and then I got my master's and then my license. So yeah, but since I was in high school, I always knew that I wanted to work with people. It was just which population really spoke to me that didn't come until later.
For sure. And that's so unique. That had to be like just a crazy um environment of, I mean, so many different emotions and I mean mental health is probably at its, all-time high within that kind of community. So to be able to really kind of reach people and work with that group is that had to be, I would think, extremely fulfilling as well, but definitely unique.
Yeah, yeah, definitely fulfilling and challenging. And that's kind of what I like the balance to be. I don't ever want to get complacent or feel bored.
Hmm.
And so
Totally with you on that.
definitely there's that balance of fulfilling and then also, yeah, pushing me. Hmm.
I love that. I was just telling my husband, I think it's important no matter what you do to kind of push yourself or challenge yourself a little bit um, each day. And just, it could be something minor. but I feel like when you do that, there's that sense of accomplishment and you're like, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone and I can achieve this. And we do that a lot in jujitsu as jujitsu instructors and coaches, but it's just a way to kind of put yourself, out of your comfort zone each day to kind of continue challenging yourself,
Mhm. Yeah.
but also creating that balance. So I love that you bring that up. We just literally talked about that in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So how many years did you spend doing that? Are you still currently working with a lot of that community?
Yeah. So the podcast and what I do as far as one-on-one session is not my full-time job. My full-time job, I still work as therapist for those who are incarcerated.
Okay.
So that's my real job. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years now. And
Okay.
before that I worked, doing other forms of counseling and stuff just with a different population. But yeah, that's what I
Sure.
do full time. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. How do you have time? So this is also now me as I mean, I get this and I feel like I can relate to you on many levels, but you know, in your bio on your website too, you talk about just how you wear so many hats, right? And
Mhm.
I get that as being an entrepreneur and, uh, doing 5 million and one other things, podcasting, blogging, and just my
Mhm.
career's evolved. So I do a lot of things, but um, like seeing your Instagram account and seeing you recording, we know how much time and effort it takes into social
Mhm.
media and marketing and branding yourself and recording podcasts and putting all that out. So that's a lot of time
Mhm.
on top of your job and then ultimately working with, other stepmoms, I'm sure, one on one.
Mhm.
Um, so how do you find, you know, your balance? I'm always talking about self-care. How do you find kind of the balance between all of your roles and kind of take some time out for you?
Yeah. It's been a learning experience. And I think in the beginning of everything, I had a lot of expectations for myself and I put a lot of pressure on myself and I had specific goals and I worked hard towards them. And there was it wasn't a crash and burnout, but there was burnout in areas. And you use the word balance. And I think that's one of the things that I've let go of. I can't achieve balance at all. So I don't even try. It's more of this acceptance that I won't always show up as, 100% in everything. And it's up to me as to where that energy goes and what's most important to me or what's a priority at the time. So, if some weeks, some days it's, I really want to get this episode out. I really want to focus on creating a new workshop or, I have a meetup coming up. I need to put my energy into planning that. And that means I'm not going to show up, I'm not going to be cooking dinners every night. I'm not going to
Sure.
be
Yeah.
able to, sit on the couch with my husband and watch our show. Or, sometimes I'm not going to be creating new content this week. I'm just going to, focus on my real job and I have meetings to attend. And so it's just being really understanding that things are going to ebb and flow. And I just kind of keep a pulse on what my priorities are and communicate that with, my friends, family, because, sometimes I'm not showing up as the best wife, or I haven't talked to my friends in a couple weeks and I'm not being a really good friend right now, or, so I feel like that has been my largest area of growth, to just be gentle with myself. And that
Exactly. This was.
mentality right there is what is my self-care, where it can acknowledge. And sometimes everything goes to the wayside and I'm like, you know what? And I usually do this on the weekends. I'm usually pretty quiet on Instagram during the weekends because I unplug, I spend time with my family, I journal, I read, I, have my planner out and I start working on my priorities for the next week. So yeah, that has been my biggest form of self-care, is just being gentle with myself and checking my own expectations. Because I can just beat myself up if I'm always searching for that balance, because it doesn't exist.
Totally. And I love that. I love how you explain that. And I think it is focusing, your priorities may shift and the communication is key. And, setting expectations of where you're going to be able to uh, set your energy or focus your energy. I love that. And I love how you kind of evaluate that each week. And I think that therein kind of creates that bigger balance of where you are spending kind of time in different areas. But that's okay, right? I feel like sometimes too, especially as women and women in business, we can kind of take that. We have to justify so much, and we have to always be 100%. And it's like, look, there's a lot going on, and it's okay. It's okay if I need to put this to the side for now and focus on something else a little bit more relevant or present.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's awesome to hear. So when taking that social media break, I think that's always important, in that screen time. And as long as we know you're consistent, your followers know when you're posting, and to kind of, be able to see when content's coming out, and know what to expect. But when did you start the podcast, and what really prompted you to do that?
Yeah. So I met a coworker. So the OGs of the Radical Stepmoms podcast know that I started the first few seasons with my friend Gannett. So she was a coworker at the time, and her and I, she joined our office, our team, and I trained her, and just by going to lunch with her and hanging out with her and stuff, we were like, oh my gosh, you're a stepmom too. And we would just share all these different stories. And I'm sharing, about my stepson. She's sharing about her stepdaughter. And it was just like, we're laughing and crying and saying, oh my God, me too. And, and it was actually, her idea. She was like, we have these crazy situations going on. And we should just record our conversations and, share it, because there's got to be more of us out there. And I'm more of the social media person, the technology person. I very quickly was like, all right, here's how we can do it. And I bought the microphones and, figured out, okay, well, if we're going to have a podcast, we have to have a way of getting it out there, and telling people about it. So I started the Instagram account. And so this was back in the spring. I think it was like right before Mother's Day, which was a big day for stepmoms, of 2019. So, we started it up, and now it feels like Instagram and the podcast are their own little monsters, because I never know how people find me. Sometimes it's, oh, I found your podcast first, or it's, oh, I found you on Instagram, or now it's, someone mentioned you on Facebook. And so then so it's just, this is a weird way of thinking, but the podcast was the first, the first baby, and then it's just kind of grown from there. Yeah.
I mean, you have like 23,000 followers right now on your Instagram account. And that's how I initially found you. I found you on Instagram. So I didn't, of course, I can see in the bio you have a podcast, but that's what was like, I was seeing every day. And just the way, it's like you're in our heads. It's crazy, but it's so awesome. Just so relatable. And you use a lot of humor, which I think always can help in any situation. And whether it's good or bad, if somebody's struggling in stepmom life, or like everything's going great, like there's something, you kind of hit all points. And I think it's just, it's one of those things that really kind of validates you and makes you not feel alone or feel, in quotes, crazy, as much as I dislike that word, but you feel like there's a tribe there, and other people are experiencing kind of what you're going through.
Yeah, that was my goal. That's always been my goal. And, I love seeing the comments where it's like, are you in my house? How do you know about these conversations that I'm having with my partner? And I always think, because I'm you, because I'm experiencing these same things. And, there's some content out there that I can't speak to, personally, and I, share, that's when I have my, therapist hat on, where I'm like, I may not be able to know what you're experiencing personally, like firsthand, but I know the feeling behind it. I know that, you're suffering in some way. And, but yeah, that relatability is, and I feel like another part of my mission, or my goal for stepmoms to feel, is you can go on any social media platform and see the village that surrounds motherhood, right? It's like, as soon as a child exits your body, you're like a part of the club. Like, oh, messy hair, you're drinking wine, you're complaining about lack of sleep, like all this stuff, right? And it's like, that's so fantastic for moms. And it's such a good way to feel less alone and to feel included. And that community is so powerful. And I want stepmoms to feel that. And not only in the way of, yeah, we have messy hair. Yeah, we like wine after the kids go to bed. Or, yeah, we're losing sleep. That too, but also all the unique experiences that stepmoms feel, that we can all go, oh, yeah, I know what that feeling is when the kids leave and go back to their moms and you're feeling relief. Yep. I know what that's like. Right. Like, it's things like that I want stepmoms to be able to find a safe space on social media, or, putting on a podcast while they're driving in the car or whatever. And they can go, there's a place for me in this world too. And it doesn't mean that it means that I'm a mom, but it's also, I'm honoring the unique things that make me a stepmom.
For sure. And, it is, it's interesting, the different emotions that you kind of go through, and especially when you are helping support and raise a child that you did not birth. So kind of figuring out those boundaries, and it's different for everybody, but how you can kind of be and what you can implement in your own home, and the role you take on. So it can be different, especially at first, that transition when you're all together as a family, but you're in a home, with a new family, a blended family that you maybe didn't give birth to, and it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you get to understand kind of both aspects of it, where you have, a birth child, and then you are also a stepmom. So I think it's, it's great that you speak to all of that and let people feel safe and okay with their feelings. It's okay to feel a certain way. And, having that love and support where, it never takes like a negative tone. It's always so just honest and real. Like, we're here, like, it's a stepmom environment, but nobody's, putting hate towards moms. It's like, this is what we just want to like be included in that. Right. And, you've talked about this a few times, and I had written a blog about it, but it's interesting, as I was more of an observer of this before really being in this world, but how stepmoms are just viewed a little bit more of that kind of villain character versus like stepdads are kind of that hero.
Oh, yeah.
So where have you, I know, and you say you're like, oh yeah, big time, but I never really thought about that or saw it. And, I don't think I've had I want to say pretty great experience, but I know and can see how like others may not. So how do you feel about, you've talked about that, but why do we think that it's so, is it jealousy? Is it, what, because we're in this world where we want to see, especially I know with my business, I want to empower other women, and I want to support other women. But when it comes to kind of this dynamic, and, it seems a little different, and you speak on how it takes a tribe to raise a family. But then when, the stepmom's kind of included, it's like everyone else but you.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a big topic. And, I think some of it really comes down to our society and the way that mothers are viewed, and the way that mothers are valued, and, the identity behind motherhood. I think it really starts there, the expectations of mothers. And, it's that mama bear mentality. There's only one mom, and having a baby is such a part of your identity, and the bond and all that stuff. There's so much surrounding that messaging that when another mother figure that was not, and it's not, and right, there's a difference between an aunt that comes in, right? An aunt can take the daughter to go buy a bra or help her with her getting ready for her dance or whatever, and it's not seen as threatening. A grandma can do that, but as soon as a stepmom comes into play, it's not their place. And I feel like that there's just this, it's seemed as threatening to the biological mother's role. When you look at that kind of messaging contrasted with fathers, right? Fathers are kind of replaceable. It's so cute that the dad is at the park with their kids. There's these double standards where even stepdads aside, dads alone get praise for pushing their kids around in a grocery cart. Meanwhile, mothers are doing that constantly, and they get oh, you have your hands full, not you're such a great mom. Right? There's this different messaging, and we get the same kind of thing with stepdads. And, oh, it's such a great thing that you were able to step into your role and take on being a dad, because the assumption there is that the dad is a deadbeat, right? That the dad is not relevant, that the dad was obviously awful, and that's why he's no longer in the picture. It's never the mom was awful, or she's just not fit, or she whatever, and that's why the stepmom is in the picture. We would never say that about the mother. So it all starts kind of with our societal views of each role, and then when a new person comes in to assist or influence with the parenting, how those roles are also viewed. They're viewed the same. So it's a convoluted thing. And I feel like, there are some who would completely disagree with that. But I feel like, starting with Disney, I talk about this all the time. Disney does no favors. There's evil stepmoms that come in and they're feeding poison apples, and they're jealous of the kid, and they just want the kid to go away. And
yeah, thanks a lot, Disney. That's like,
yeah. Or, just the other kind of, media with, stepdads being able to, I was just talking about this over the weekend. I was watching the Netflix show, Ginny and Georgia.
Okay. Oh, I haven't watched it, but I saw that up there.
And there is a bio dad and stepdad in there. And the bio mom is like, you guys should go out and get a drink. You need to talk things out. You need to, we're all in this together. And, you don't see that very often when it comes to the stepmom and the mom, right? You see more of the stepmom needs to know her place and not step on the toes of the mom. And it's her way or the highway, and that kind of stuff. And, there's a lot to dissect there. And I think it just comes down to how we view moms and how we view dads and where they find their value. And, the really, I guess, the situations that that work really well, I feel it comes down to everyone having done their own inner work and literally like really, really putting the kids first and leaving their egos at the door, right? Where a mom can say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that there's another woman in her life or his life that treats him well and that can, take care of him when I can't. And, she is showing up and she is loving my kid, and it's fantastic for my kid to have another person in their life that why wouldn't I want that? Right. And that's the big question. Why wouldn't they want that?
And then and I, it's understandable. And I think you can be empathetic towards that. And I can, it's got to be challenging to have your child with somebody else. And then there's, this woman that comes in. But it does come down to, okay, let's, taking the ego away a little bit. And ultimately, is my child safe? Is this person a kind, loving person that's there to help support the child? And it does become that, like, we're all in it, in that community to help, raise the children together. But there's never, I mean, I can speak for me. I'm never going to try and, replace their mother, their mother. Like,
Right.
that's their mother.
Mhm.
And I want
Yes.
them to love and have a great relationship with their mom. I'm just someone else here that can help love and guide them and
Right.
support them, So,
Yeah.
and that may be different, for other people, but I think keeping that in mind, and when you think about that, it's like, oh, well, yeah, that really doesn't sound so bad, does it? you know?
Right. Yeah. And that's the common misconception. And that's again going into how society views stepmoms, is it's always this competition and that we were never wanting to be a part of. There never seems to
Right.
be a competition when it's dads and stepdads. Right.
No.
So, and I'm like, I can't be my stepson's mom. I can't. And nor do I really, well, I don't want that place. He has a great relationship with her. And I want a separate relationship that is ours and unique. And, it's taken nearly 9 years to establish what that looks like because, sometimes my stepson wants me to do things that his mom does. And, there are some things that I'm not comfortable with. So I'm the one creating that boundary. My cat. um,
We're talking about
so
our animals coming in, interrupting podcasts.
yeah, my cat now wants to be out of the office.
I love it.
So yeah, it's that competition that we get stuck on and that we feel we have to defend and really let the mom know, like, I'm not trying to replace you. You are very, very relevant and you don't need to be threatened by me. Yeah, but that's hard for a lot of moms to, and like you had mentioned, like I wear both hats, right? So I'm a stepmom and then my husband and I have our daughter together. But I will always be a stepmom first. And so I always see through that lens first,
I love that.
where I'm like, I talk to different bio moms, or my friends or whatever. And, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, yeah. But, and I'm always going to come with that stepmom and that stepmom perspective. But yeah, I talked to my husband too, where I'm like, if we unfortunately didn't work out and you moved on, one, I would be like, I want to meet her because I want to be like, girlfriend, are you in for a ride? Because I know that other baby mama. And also
Yeah.
like, please take care of my daughter. Brush her hair. Sometimes my husband doesn't know what he's doing. So, I would want to be
For
like,
sure.
so
Embracing that. Yeah.
yeah, but there's the different, not everyone is like that. And that's kind of where the struggle lies and why I have a whole platform talking about the struggle.
For sure. Which, I mean, like I said, we absolutely love. And that was a great segue and little transition. But what tools you offer a ton, I feel like, on your website? And there's a lot of free tools and resources. Even for, I feel like stepmoms and parents just going through, perhaps different like custody, issues, or just resources to use in stepmom life. But you have different kind of, you know, subscription levels and ways that people can join your community and have one-on-one sessions with you. But what is everything? Kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown of everything that you do offer at the Radical Stepmom kind of tribe.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's obviously the free resources like Instagram. So my posts and I get on stories and share things and all of that. And then there's blogs on the website. So at radicalstepmomspodcast.com, there's my blogs. For those that are wanting more of that community piece and wanting to meet each other, or wanting that one-on-one support from me, so I do one-on-one sessions. So I'm a licensed therapist in Washington State, but for those that are not in Washington State, I do consider what I do coaching. So I have limitations in what I can do, and I explain all that on my website, but I do one-on-one coaching and I do workshops. So stepmoms who are wanting to really just chat with someone who gets it and who has gone through similar things, and just wants to have, discuss different tools or way of coping. One-on-one sessions is where we do that. And there's different ways and, all the packages and things like that. But that's where I really merge my knowledge of, yeah, girl, I get it. And also, I have the toolbox and being, different ways of coping with things and different way of processing. And then there's the private community. So that's, if you like all the free content, and want to have virtual dates or want exclusive episodes or want to meet friends. And, I do what I call stepmom to stepmom. So you apply and I
love
can,
that.
yeah, I connect
So
you.
cool.
I connect you with as close as I can get a stepmom within your area or based on compatibility. So if you're like, God, I just want someone who, is also a young stepmom and who has a young stepkid and 2 baby mamas, I will try, because there's someone else like you out there. Or if it's,
For
gosh,
sure.
I just moved here and I don't know anyone and I just want a stepmom friend. I've been able to connect stepmoms within like 20 minutes of each other. And
Oh my God. You're like a stepmom matchmaker.
yeah, yep.
That's so fun.
Yeah, so it is really fun. And then my favorite part is when I get selfies of because they'll meet in person and, and they send me pictures. It's just really cool because it goes back to that original feeling when I met Gannett, where I'm like, oh my God, your soul just shifts because you just know that they know what you're going through. Even in just the smallest way, even if your circumstances are wildly different, you're taking care of a kid that isn't yours, and there's complexities in that. So yeah, so that's, and then of course there's the podcast that, I'll be starting up season 6, in February.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what it's all about. I'm so much more than a podcast. There's lots to it, depending upon what kind of supports you're looking for.
It's incredible. And I just have to say again, like, you're that for me. Like, even if I don't know that I need it, or just knowing that you're there and the community's there and that you're going to have some great posts, it's almost like starting my day with that. It's great to be able to see that, and that support and love that, kind of radiates from that community is awesome, and just kind of gives you that empowerment. It's like, like, right on. This is like a great tribe. I'm glad like I can see this and be a part of it in some way. And it just gives you that inner strength. It's awesome just to know that there's other people like that live the way you do, so that's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah. It's one thing when you're like dreaming it up and hoping, and it hasn't always been the rainbows and stuff, right? Like there's the mean people or the misguided stepmoms that there are evil ones, right? That are out there and that just, or there's just the judgy people. And, I work really hard to, keep those people out and to make my mission known that it's a non-judgment, that our feelings are not indicators of our character. They're just feelings, right? And that I can say, I don't want my stepson here, but that doesn't make me mean. That doesn't make me an awful stepmom. It just means I'm dealing with some hard stuff. And that's what we do, that we do the work, and figure it out. So yeah, thank you for sharing how you experienced the platform, because that's entirely my mission.
I think it's extremely positive and just makes you feel good. And, it just hits, it's like just enough. It's just like, yes, like that's how the post you put up, it's just like those yes moments. Like, yes, we feel the same way. Like, this girl knows what she's talking about. This is awesome. So it's super inspiring and motivating. So I think it's incredible. I know it's hard to deal with that. And sometimes there's always going to be haters and things like that.
That's the nature of social media.
For sure. And trying to detach from that. And, you're helping so many people. So it's like, just stay on that journey,
Yeah. Thank you.
It's awesome. So, real quick before we kind of start coming to a little bit of a close, I wanted to know if you could just give like some basic tips of advice, or your best advice, I'd say, for new stepmom?
Mm. Ugh, yeah.
I
So
know that
define
might be a
new.
tough, just a few, yeah,
Yeah.
newer stepmoms,
Newer.
maybe not
Yeah.
OG stepmoms, but just sage pieces of
Yeah.
advice, that are your go-tos, I'd say.
Yeah. And talking with probably at this point, hundreds, if not thousands of stepmoms, I've kind of come up with the pattern or the very common things we experience in stepmotherhood, and some things that I don't want to call them mistakes, because I feel like they're so natural things to do, but they end up forming into something we may not like in the future. And by that, I mean jumping in really, really quick to being that stepmom, right? And what I mean by it naturally comes because here we are coming into a relationship and we're wanting to feel like we belong. We're wanting to feel like we fit. We're wanting to show our partner that we can handle this. We're wanting to, and some of it just comes naturally because maybe we have that maternal instinct and we're like, that was me. I was like, oh yeah, I got this. He's so cute. He's 3 years old. Like, I got this. Like, I can do this. And I was really confident and I wanted to feel like we were a family, or that I could hang. And I didn't question that. All that is good. But where I lost it was where I lost myself, where I got way too immersed in this dynamic and I lost that person I was before I met my partner, where I wasn't hanging out with my friends anymore. And I wasn't working out. I wasn't, tending to her. I wasn't saying, you know what, he's your kid, you spend time with him and I'm going to go hang out. Like, I felt like I needed to be there all the time and I felt guilty if I wasn't. And there has to be, using that word balance again, there has to be this point where you can have both and you feel confident in both. And so much of, I feel, where we get caught up is we are at the same time trying to establish a relationship while also trying to parent. And that is a very unique journey and experience that step parents face, because traditionally, right, like you date your partner and you then get engaged and then you get married and then you're like, oh, do you want to have a baby? Oh, let's plan for a baby. Or like, maybe we don't plan, but we're still like have this period of time, and we don't get that. We go straight into having to consider, a custody schedule or a bedtime routine or whatever, while trying to plan our dates, right? While trying to, and it's hard, and we're trying, to honor where our partners are at and that, oh, they're a parent right now. But we get lost in it and we lose sight of what our needs are and what we're actually comfortable with. So that is like my biggest, and when you get at a certain point, right? Like I could, stepmoms could be listening to this right now and going, yeah, absolutely, I did do that, but now what? There is still hope, right? That's where I encourage stepmoms to start redefining their role and starting to consider, maybe I don't want to show up like this anymore. Maybe this is no longer serving me. Maybe I feel underappreciated. Maybe I feel resentful. And being confident to say, hey, if this is going to be sustainable and if I'm going to be happy in this relationship and if I'm going to be the best stepmom I can be, I have to pull back in these areas and find me again. And having the partner that can celebrate that and be like, yep, absolutely. Go hang out with your friends. I got this. Right. There's always an opportunity to pull back and say, I have to change the status quo because it's no longer working.
I love that. Well, not losing yourself. I think we can tend to do that in so many roles, but that's something that, you bring up that point where it's like, you are kind of transitioning into that parenthood role as,
at the same time,
establishing your relationship. So you could see kind of wanting to maybe overcompensate a little bit or all in, like, yes, and I like my personality's like that. But I think it's nice too that, I know I do wear a lot of hats, but it's great being able to focus on all those things. And then how does our schedule fit in our relationship? And also showing them that, I am very independent and also have, all of these goals that I still want to achieve, but I can also be here as a support and loving family member for you at the same time. So it's cool, I I love that. I think that's one of the best pieces of information because you do want to be able to go in 100% and show up as that best stepmom possible, but you can't forget about yourself. It's that self-care. It comes back to that. And I think that's okay for people to honor, and you don't have to feel guilty about that.
Yeah. And again, going back to how unique stepmotherhood is, but also how the parallels are there when it comes to motherhood. And that's always a part of my messaging is you are a mom because you are dealing with certain things that all mothers experience, and loss of identity is one of them. We see that in the motherhood community, especially in postpartum, and you're losing yourself and you're completely immersed in your children, and there's this this push and this encouragement for moms to do what they want to do to make them happy and to not feel guilty about it. And stepmoms deserve that same messaging. And especially when there are two other active parents in the picture, right? When there are two other active parents in the picture but the stepmom feels the largest burnout, that's when there's an imbalance there. And when we have to really advocate for ourselves and our own mental health and saying, I'm going to, I had told you this before we started recording. I spent the weekend, I took my daughter and her and I went and spent it at my dad's house, and I left my husband and my stepson at home. I didn't take my stepson. And there was a little bit of guilt there, but at the same time, I'm like, you can spend a weekend with your son and not have me there and not have, and that's entirely okay to do. But yeah, that messaging of we have to reassess and take care of ourselves. And when we start to feel guilty or, oh, I'm not a good stepmom or, whatever, we got to check ourselves, because us investing in our own happiness and taking a step back or readjusting or whatever is what makes us better stepmoms.
1,000%. I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of those roles too, even more so. It's like you can get wrapped up in thinking about everybody else's feelings and putting them because there's so many feelings to take into consideration. So then it's like, well, what about me? And, we always have to do that, right? I mean, it's like being in the plane and putting the mask on, right? You got to put it on yourself first before anybody else. So, I think that, like you said, that same grace should definitely be passed on and given to stepmoms just as much.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Christina, this has been amazing. I'm like, thank you so much. This is all so great. Great info. And everybody, like I said, you've got to check out Christina's website, radicalstepmomspodcast.com. And then follow her on Instagram at Radical Stepmoms Podcast. You will not be disappointed. So awesome. Absolutely love it. But I really do appreciate you taking the time out and being able to be on today. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for all that you do. It's so appreciated. And to all the guests and listeners out there, anybody you'd like me to have on the podcast, I always love referrals. Please send me a message on my Instagram at All Things Gen Z. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much. Bye.